And we are live. At least we should be. We should be live. We will see if we're live.
OMICRON, the War of Ideas with John J. Parker.
Yeah, I just want to test audio and video. If you're watching it, my lips are syncing up to the audio you're getting. It should be fine. That's all I'm worried about. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the test. I can watch myself actually like 10 seconds.
Okay. So as soon as you said that's the test, then you started counting on the YouTube stream. So it was a good 5 seconds delay.
Oh no. Well, delay between Discord and YouTube is fine. I'm worried about audio-video delay in the video itself. You know what I mean?
The audio video looks fine.
I want to make sure it's in sync. Okay, well, if you think it's fine, then it's fine. Okay, it's just me and Doolittle in here right now. I'm going to send out the second announcement. I did invite a couple other people. But basically, welcome everybody, whoever's watching. Today we are talking about OMICRON. We've talked about COVID before on this show, but now OMICRON is quite the new development. It is less severe typically, and also much more transmissible. And it has the public health authorities scratching their heads a little bit. To what extent is what we're going to talk about today, as well as what it means for the pandemic at large and for the world and for everybody's personal behavior, according to everybody's own moral standards. So should be fun. I expect some heated debate, which is always the goal here in the War of Ideas. With us to start out, we have Doolittle, who's a veteran, who I actually asked personally. We have Neurotic Shrimp, and of course we have the Pangburn. So I'm expecting more people to come in. I'm going to send out the announcement now that we're live right now. But other than that, I just kind of want to get your guys' takes. Doolittle, you can start, or I can go to Neurotic Shrimp, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, so just my take on Omicron.
Yeah, basically.
I think this was a foreseeable eventuality with any pandemic. It's pretty common for a more virulent and less deadly strain to come around, and kind of squelch the pandemic itself. I mean, it's been written about in many books and novels and movies. This kind of thing happens. Look at the book, The Andromeda Strain. Something similar, big, scary virus, and then eventually just like, whoop, what happened?
Right.
And that's one of nature's ways of taking care of business. Personally, I think, the pandemic is essentially over. All the things that we did to solve the old strains are not really working to prevent the spread. And then when it does spread, people are dying at, less than 1/3 of the rate. So, there's a lot of reason to start going back to normal now, I think. Just how do we go about that, I think, is an important question.
All right.
Coolio. Does anyone know the stats, off by heart? If we were to take, the death rate of COVID over the last, let's say 4 or 5 months, is it significantly worse than a really bad flu season?
You mean the current COVID death rates, or the death rates from Omicron specifically? What do you mean?
The recent death rates.
From
COVID. within the last 5-6 months.
From COVID overall. I do not have those on hand, but I can look them up for you. Doolittle might know.
So with regarding death statistics, there's some controversy about what's a COVID death or not. So what some people did is they just look at the trend of yearly deaths overall. And then you just look at the increase in yearly deaths that happened, and then you subtract from the trend line, and you can find out. And I don't remember the exact numbers on it, but it was. Yeah, I actually don't remember the numbers on it. Straight up.
So
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, somebody please look that up and put it in the live text so we can get the answer. But
you're talking about what number are you looking for? Because I think we can.
Like total
Like,
yearly
the
deaths in
problem
the
is
given
like when I
country
look
by
it up
year.
at the CDC, they don't tell you the number of deaths in the last 30 days. They just have a graph that says last 30 days, and then they give you the total deaths.
I'm
There's no,
saying
like,
just look at the
number
total
to it.
deaths in a country.
Yeah, so
by
I have
year,
I have
and then
the
you can see the trend.
I have on my computer, which I'm not talking on. I have the Google webpage, which takes it from the New York Times, who aggregates data from various sources for the number of COVID deaths that are being reported. In the state of North Carolina, where I live, looking at all counties, our current case rate is averaging 30,000 new cases a day in all counties in North Carolina. And the number of deaths per day attributable to COVID are averaging 41. So 41 so 41 out of 30,000 people are dying in North Carolina in terms of deaths per case. In terms of the peaks, the biggest peak in North Carolina was on February 5th of 2021, which was approximately 1 year ago, and that was a death rate of 120-ish, 110, 120 deaths a day in North Carolina, and right now we're
interesting.
like I said, we're down to 40. So we have way more cases than we did back then. Like the number of cases we have right now, 30,000 a day, and at the peak of the death rate, we were having 8,000 a day case rate. So we essentially have more than 3 times as many. I'm sorry, more than 4.
I just found out Ontario actually tracks this with a percentage number. The death rate is down by 35% from what it was at its peak. So yeah, it's still significantly worse than the flu.
The death rate's down, but then the death rates per case, right?
Yeah,
is a different story because
percentages is for.
And you also have to remember that these deaths are very top heavy in terms of age and comorbidities. So like it's also important to remember to get an accurate picture of the from old people who are already sick in some other way. And that's not to say be an idiot. It's just to say be aware of how skewed the deaths are. Because not all cases are created equal.
There's been 31 deaths in Ontario in the last 32 days, 2 of which are old people and 7 of which are healthcare workers working in old folks' homes.
31 with how do we know like how confirmed they are as far as causality goes? Like, with COVID.
I have no idea. I don't trust the Canadian government to give accurate statistics worth a damn, but it is what it is.
Who was in here first? I think it was Snark. I don't actually know if I recognize you, Snark. Welcome to the party. We're talking about Omicron and what it means for public health policy as well as for your personal life. And we'd love to get your take on what you think about all this.
COVID in general or Omicron specifically?
Scusi?
Did you say COVID in general or
No,
Omicron
specifically? Omicron specifically. We talked about COVID before, but Omicron's a pretty major development.
Well, I mean, as far as I understand, it's much more catchy, but it's less lethal. Have I got that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think the issue with COVID has always been overwhelming the medical system. That's always been my biggest issue with COVID, like the biggest problem. Because you're always going to have people who are going to need... they're weak, they have a weak immune system, whatever. They're going to need the medical system to help them out, whether it's hospitals, whatever the equipment is. So the complication with something that's more catchy, I think, is, again, overwhelming the medical system. You don't want to come to a point where hospitals can't take care of everyone they need to take care of.
Right, and I'm not a vax mandate type of guy, but I think overwhelming the hospital system has always been the strongest argument for medical mandates. And with Omicron, I forget the efficacy rate. I don't want to say things that are wrong, but let's say vaguely that Omicron is more transmissible than the other variants even if the person is being transmitted to as a vaccine. So the idea of you getting a vaccine to protect others doesn't make as much sense anymore. But the hospitalization stuff still does, because, you know, even though it's less deadly, there's a lot of people, and like you said, it can overwhelm the healthcare system. I'm not actually too in touch with the numbers on that. I feel like they've been saying hospitals are being overrun for like the last 2 years, so that might be the case. But hospitalization has always been the strongest argument. So are you in favor of keeping those vax mandates up?
Well, first of all, I live in Israel, so
I see,
I don't
I see,
really.
I see.
Yeah.
But Israel is like having real problems though, despite its like massively high vaccination rate, right? Like last I checked.
Well, yeah. I mean, I have a friend who works in the hospital. He says that they're filling rooms, they're filling offices with beds and turning them into COVID wards. They are getting overwhelmed.
Wow. Well, that's interesting.
And that's with like everyone getting 3 shots, and now people starting to get 4 shots as well.
I got a feeling whatever's going on in Israel isn't the Omicron strain. It's probably a resurgence of Lambda in some way.
Maybe that's possible. I mean, we should be able to differentiate, right?
They're saying it's Omicron. I wouldn't know personally.
Well, it wouldn't make
Okay.
sense. It wouldn't make sense for a virus to specifically single out a race that way, like a localized. If it's not hospitalizing people in Canada and the States, it's not going to hospitalize people in Israel just because it doesn't make any sense.
Well, do you know? Well, the rates might be the. I don't know.
The other thing too
That's
is
weird.
like I think honestly the fact that Canada had a huge problem with SARS in Toronto when it first happened, and the hospitals got overwhelmed, and there was a whole bunch of people who said we need to prepare for this next time. We'll prepare for this next time. We'll all be ready. And then this came along, and they still didn't do it. I feel like the hospitals being overwhelmed is more of a political issue than it is the virus being severe.
Right, there is
Because-
a. Sorry, you were probably going to say it. Never mind. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you go back to a history of other plagues, hospitals set up tents and set up areas, and they took care of people. There wasn't this sudden, oh God, everyone's going to die. Like that just wasn't a thing. It was, we'll do what we have to.
Right,
The
and
mentality changed.
and wicked ironically, there's been this policy that's kind of made the rounds of about like if you're a nurse and you're not vaccinated, even if you get like negative tests every morning, you can't come into work. But if you are vaccinated, you can come into work. So you have situations where healthy, unvaccinated healthcare workers can't come in, while vaccinated but sick ones can. And that's also contributing to the hospital problems because you have a staffing shortage. That's something I've also heard that's going on in the U.S. at least, which is rather concerning and is probably not making the problem better. But I kind of want to see what everybody thinks the proper policy should be going forward in light of Omicron. So we're going to move on to Zemo, who I think was here next. So Zemo, please give me your take. Well, give me what your take was, and then tell me if it's changed by Omicron, and if so, how so? Good to see you.
Well,
again,
yeah,
by
I
the way.
mean, my take, originally with COVID was always, like Snark said, to, flatten the curve, stay home, that type of stuff. And it went from 2 weeks to, I don't know, like a year and a half or whatever. I still care. I still think people should get vaccinated. But yeah, I mean, but I'm pretty much done with COVID. I'm just over it. I mean, we just have to learn to live with it. I mean, it is more, I don't know how many hospitals are getting overwhelmed nowadays, because of percentages of people that have to be hospitalized from Omicron. I don't know if they're as high, but you still have the rest of it. But I just think it's something we have to live with, and some of these insane like safetyism policies, especially stuff you're seeing in Australia, is worrisome, as well as the anti-scientific, anti-vax community, which has been laying in wait for a long time to sprout its ugly head. But I mean, we've had a few other variants, and I don't know. It's just at this point, it's just fatigue of the the same thing, and nothing really seems to change that much.
Before Omicron, were you of the same opinion that we just need to learn to? Oh. Before Omicron, were you of the same opinion that we just need to learn to live with it? Or is Omicron really the game changer for you?
No, I've thought, no. I've thought, I mean, not at the very beginning. I thought, I was naive as anybody else, and maybe it would go away. But once the realization is that it's here, we're not going to eradicate it out of existence, at least in the near term. Omicron really is a drop in the bucket for me, personally.
Cool. Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm ignorant of some things it's doing. I don't keep up with it that well. I've heard it's another variant. It's highly contagious. I mean, coronavirus is already highly contagious, but it's, less severe. It's a milder variant, right? So.
Well, what do you think about what do you think about?
I don't know why that should garner a lot of attention,
Sure. Well, it's garnering attention because it's kind of the death knell, right? Because basically, I think Fauci came out and said it. I'm pretty sure. And given that he is literally the science, we should definitely listen to him. Because he said that basically everyone's going to get it. And it's endemic. There's no way. Omicron is officially, there's no way to prevent you from actually getting this at some point. Which makes the protect others from getting it argument kind of bad as far as, hospitalizations and deaths go. It's just... as far as medical capacity goes. So they might still push the vaccine mandate stuff on that basis alone, but we'll have to see. Tom, you were in here pretty early. I want to know what you think about Omicron. Has it changed your opinion at all on proper policy? If so, how? And let me hear your thoughts.
Well, the Moderna stock took a steep dive, 130%. Because it's not effective. The form of vaccine, which is not really a vaccine.
What do you mean by that?
It's different. It doesn't meet the definition.
What's the definition? Clue me in.
It's a different form of treatment. It's basically a genomic treatment, a gene treatment.
Oh yeah.
Therapy. It's not immunity, like catching the infection causes. You don't gain immunity by it in the same way.
Sure.
And Omicron that's why Omicron is spreading like it is. There's no immunity to it. It had to make a new vaccine, a new shot, and sell it and do all the politics. So getting a booster is just going to give you a sore arm and not give you any protection.
I thought I heard a number that the booster does boost effectiveness, at least from protection from severe effects. There's not transmission. Do you know if that's the case? I'm pretty sure that's right.
For
that does
Omicron?
do something.
That's new to me.
What did you say, John?
I said that the
protection.
the booster has some level of effectiveness, I'm sure, at transmission or hospitalization or death. I should probably just find out, but
I don't think that's true. But maybe.
I believe there was a lot of worry at whether or not it would do that because Omicron was different. I believe it's borne out that it is actually effective at reducing symptoms somewhat.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I would be surprised if the vaccines didn't affect Omicron at all, right? I mean,
right. I mean,
it's a variant. It's a variant, but it's still COVID, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone in my house had all their shots, got it. My mother had a heart attack because of it, and it affected my heart because I started having retaining fluid in my lower extremities after I got it, Omicron. And
Oh.
it sudden change, it really made me extremely sick.
Sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I take steroids and I'm still not totally over it.
One thing that's been interesting is the actually, we'll go to Ally and then we'll move on. Ally, I also don't think I recognize you, so welcome to the party. We're talking about Omicron and how it would change your view of how we should treat COVID going forward, if it's changed it at all, and anything you're thinking in regards to it. So I'd love to get your take here, man. Or woman, theoretically, but odds are probably a guy. Ally? Going once. All right, how about Ness? Because I'm not going to say that username.
Yo, what up? It's Fierce Team.
All right, fair enough, man.
What's up, bud?
We're talking about Omicron. We're talking about
Omicron, dude. World's fucked.
World's fucked by Omicron.
Omicron.
No, dude, I have no idea, dude. All I know is that Omicron went up. People got it. The world is like, we're not dying as much, but like cases are higher. I don't know. I'm just making things up.
No, that's right, though.
But
do you think that
COVID's bad.
Do you think that should change our approach at all, or do you think we should just keep doing what we're doing?
Yeah, I just think that we should be, I don't know, just living normal ass lives. With,
Wow.
In regards to just being careful around people we love.
This is not the consensus I was expecting, so I'm going to play some devil's advocate here. Here's an argument. Omicron is less deadly. Obviously, it's less severe, but it's also way more virulent, like everybody said 50 million times. So there's still an absolute need to take all the exact same precautions we've been taking in order to keep the hospitals from being overrun. There should be no change. If anything, we should lock down harder. Especially given the idea that since Omicron's so aerosolized and its particles are smaller, it ignores masks much more easily. So if anything, we should become more strict with all of our measures. So I'm wondering if anyone has a rebuttal to that particular line of logic. Doolittle or Zemo or Lexi.
Yeah, sure. If we continue to lock down for an extended period of time, the economic damage to the various countries that engage in such activities is going to result in more and more economic collapse, leading to people dying due to poverty and other side effects. If we're going to consider Omicron as dangerous as it is, we should compare it to the damages of taking the policies that we're choosing.
Okay. I agree. However, if it saves just one life, then it's worth it. That's the thing.
I disagree entirely. People die all the time. If we follow that logic, cars are banned.
Cars are banned? Maybe cars are banned. Maybe that's the direction. Zemo, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that, people should, get vaccinated as much as possible, but otherwise, yeah, basically open it up. Like you said, there's really, I would just ask you, how long are we going to keep this up, right? At first it was 2 weeks, and it was a month. Like I said, now it's been on 2 years. People are just done with this. I don't care if there's a new variant, right? Unless it is dropping bodies left and right, like we got to get back to normal. Where I live, honestly, we don't besides people wearing masks, besides that, I wouldn't know there's COVID. And even if you look at the numbers of like the states that have more cases, some of the states that, now granted they're higher populations, right? But a lot of the states that took higher precautions have more cases, more deaths. Like Florida, obviously hasn't been super, safetyism all up and, foamed all the corners and everything. And they're like 17th, they're like middle of the pack, right? And they have the most old people, right? So really they should have a lot more cases, especially if they're not taking precautions. You go to a restaurant, you walk in with your mask, you sit down, then you take it off because you have to eat. It's just a bunch of silly stuff. It's just a bunch of silliness, right? Yeah, I mean, obviously we should care about hospitals being overwhelmed, and if there are reaching critical mass, then if you can show me that, then maybe I reconsider my position. But I'm not aware of any becoming like, you know, I mean, we should have had enough time to plan. I mean, scientists know that these variants are coming, right? We know it's already an entirely highly transmissible disease, so there's no reason that during all this time hospitals couldn't have prepared, for another surge, right? So we don't have to constantly alter people's behavior to an extreme degree, like, oh, you can't go to work, you can't go to school. Yeah, I mean, we got to live our lives eventually.
Yeah. Can I go next?
Please.
So I kind of agree with Zemo, and I'm gonna say, he's saying, well, the hospitalizations don't seem to have materialized, and you shouldn't expect them to with a variant that's less severe, right? With the original variant, it was pretty dang severe. People had pneumonia. Most people ended up with some kind of pneumonia. A lot of people got put on ventilators, even though we discovered that's not the best course of treatment. We have now, we have prophylactic treatments like the vaccine. We have other prophylactic treatments that are more controversial. We have other treatments for people that have already contracted severe disease, including, but not limited to, things like steroids and monoclonal antibodies and things like remdesivir, which are also controversial. But there's a variety of treatments that you can get on an outpatient basis without checking yourself into the hospital and taking up a bed, and especially if you don't have a severe case. So I don't see any reason why to even be concerned that the hospitals are going to get overrun with this.
Well, because hospitals are kind of full right now, Doolittle.
No, hospitals are full right now because they closed half of them down because all of the ordinary businesses during the pandemic got pushed out. Like in Charlotte, the hospitals are like a ghost town. Hospitals are really not full. Like if you go in and you look at statistics on something like emergency room ICU bed percent capacity, hospitals manage that to keep it above 90% all the time. If there are fewer patients, they will take away ICU beds until they're above 90% capacity. If there are more patients, they will create ICU beds to get down to 90% capacity, or whatever the number is that's their target. Because having ICU beds that are sitting there idle costs money, so they don't want idle ICU beds.
Right.
So the hospitals are always going to look full, and if they don't, then capitalism isn't working.
Okay. Thank you. That's actually an angle I didn't think about, the fact that hospitals want to keep themselves relatively full. In the YouTube live chat, Danny Richardson says, if the government really gave an F about public health, they'd ban cigarettes and alcohol. Pretending forcing vaccines on the public is for the greater good is complete BS. I want everyone to react to this, but I think those are kind of two separate issues. I don't know. I mean, I understand the point that like alcohol and cigarettes kill probably more people than COVID probably will, but I mean, I don't know. I kind of respect the sentiment, not so much the argument there. Just Jim, you were here. You've been here a while. What do you think about Omicron? Has it changed your opinion on proper policy? What are you thinking?
Coming in late here, so I think I'm not sure I heard the original question, but my wife and I both got it, Omicron. She tested positive. I didn't test until about 5 days later, and then my test came up negative, but we both had the same symptoms. And really, it was like a mild flu, and I've had sinus infections worse than this. So, yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that I get some immunity to other variants that come out of this. I think there's a lot of hype. You've heard a lot in the media about the cases, the case count the so-called case count, and like, what does that mean? And what they're not quantifying is severity. And I agree with, I'm sorry, I don't remember the guy's previous name. He was talking about the hospitals.
Doolittle.
Yeah. Load, where it's like, hospitals are in the business of making money. And so they're trying to keep their ICU beds, somewhere I heard like somewhere about 90% is average for them.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of numbers being thrown around to make people scared of a particular narrative. And, almost everybody I know, family members, friends, have the same symptoms that are being described with this Omicron variant. And, it was like a bad flu for like 2 days and a bad cold for like 2 weeks. And then we got on with our lives. And I just don't see what all the hype is about, other than just pushing a narrative with the pharmaceutical companies and the boosters and whatnot.
Right. So there's another interesting thing I wanted to talk about here is that Doolittle might know more about this, but about preliminary treatments coming out. Like I know Pfizer created a pill, like just regular therapeutics for COVID-19 that we've heard nothing about from any of our public health institutions. All it is vaccines all the time. And I'm kind of curious as to why that might be, especially with, I think the WHO came out recently saying that basically, we have to learn to live with it, while the CDC has still made no such statement. So the kind of disconnect between the WHO and the CDC is interesting, since they're kind of in lockstep towards the beginning of this pandemic, and the complete ignoring of any other therapeutic options other than the vaccines are also kind of a problem for me personally, and especially with Omicron, when both of those things would make a lot more sense. So I'm kind of wondering if you guys have any theories as to why that is. Why is the CDC suddenly rebelling against the WHO, and why is everybody ignoring all the other options other than vaccines?
Well, can I ask a question real quick?
Sure, of course.
Are is it Merck that created that pill, right?
I think so. I could double check. Merck's rings a bell, but I know that there's been some therapeutics been developed.
Okay, I just wanted to ask if they're like, I know the monoclonal antibodies, have they been certified by like the FDA or whatever? Is like safe and all this?
Monoclonal antibodies are good, and there's actually a stockpile that's enough. It's kind of more of a distribution problem, as far as I understand.
Well, yeah, and there's in most major cities there are even monoclonal antibody clinics set up at like urgent care facilities. If you guys are, I don't know if other countries have that, but in the U.S. we have walk-in clinics that people can go to whether they have health insurance or not, and pay cash for medical services, and they'll take a lot of insurance too, but it's for like stuff that's not severe enough to go to the emergency room, but you also don't want to make a doctor's appointment because it's too urgent. So you got a bad cut or something, but it's not emergency room bleeding, right? So these walk-in clinics have monoclonal antibody clinics that you can go and you show your positive COVID test, and they will give you an IV and fill you up with the good stuff.
I don't know how true it is, but sorry.
Yeah, in every major city in the U.S. So why can we not publicize the use of these things? Like, most people don't even know that it's a thing.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
I don't know how true it is, but I've been told monoclonal antibodies are not particularly effective against Omicron unless they have been specifically used to target Omicron. So if it's an older stock from Delta and stuff, it's not very effective. I'm told it's still just like vaccine. It helps, but nowhere near to the effect you expect.
Yeah, back to your question, John. I think it's pretty clear that the middle to the left side of the political aisle has found it acceptable to get in bed with the pharmaceutical companies, and I can't blame them. I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and you kind of need some linkage there, right? But it's obviously kind of exceeded expectation at this point. And I mean, yeah, there's huge margins for profits. The news pumps out the narrative. The pharmaceutical companies provide the profit. I mean, they provide the product and gather the profit, and ostensibly, I guess it could be shared via kickbacks or some other scheme, right? I mean, it's not really that mysterious to me. And also, I mean, this was on Bill Maher, like, as much as the Republicans, some Republicans' response to the COVID pandemic has been pretty inept. I mean, a lot of people on the left just have the facts wrong as well. I mean, there was a poll, and it was like 50% of Democrats thought that the hospitalization rates were like 50% or something like this, or like I forget the percentage, but like a large majority of people thought if you get COVID, it's half and half chance you're going to be hospitalized, right? And and it was like 2% or 3%, right? So, like I've said this word a few times, this like safetyism that's coming over everything, which is kind of in line with what we're seeing with the parenting. I don't know if anybody's looked into like Jonathan Haidt's work on like helicopter parenting and kind of this kind of like soft, like new thing that we're seeing with like I said, with parenting and safetyism, and nerf all the squared edges, and and it's just really damaging. Like the government is just government, and the institutions are just going to tell you what to do, and you don't have to worry about a thing. Just rest your pretty little head and take the shot, and and to pretend that they don't have perverse incentives is just totally disingenuous and not connected to reality.
I do agree with that.
And that's unfortunate.
I mean, even for people who do think that we need to be more cautious, I still do not understand the idea that our institutions are really like tender-hearted and pure in intent. Like, I don't really understand how anybody believes that. And I'm not really sure anybody does, but that's kind of what you have to believe to keep trusting these people. And that's really been interesting to me, because you point out kind of a political divide, and I think COVID has created this philosophical and psychological difference in people, and has kind of divided people in that way. And I think safetyism is a nice word for it, but also is slightly inaccurate, because I'm not really sure that more, like you said, like Jonathan Haidt's work, right? He said that there was dangers to helicopter parenting, that being too safe conscious is actually dangerous long term. Yes. And I think that people are just completely unwilling to recognize the fact that there is no solution, only trade-offs. To steal from Thomas Sowell a little bit. Somebody responded to my the economic stuff, and then the psychological stuff for the young people and all that sort of thing. And I don't know, man. It's like I feel like we were in a social experiment, and like we all got an F. Like, it feels really bad. I don't really know how to feel, and it doesn't feel like it's stopping. Like the disease or the stats from the variant make it seem like, okay, this should be it, but it's very hard for me to believe that this is going to be it given the track record. So this is a very roundabout and verbose way of asking the question is, do you guys actually think the end of most of these restrictions is actually coming, or do you think it's probably just going to sally forth as it has been for a while? I want to know what you guys think on that, so we can go to Lexicon for that.
That's funny. I was shaking here, just waiting to run my mouth. If you want a ray of hope here about this whole ending, I have a suggestion to look at the economy. You'll notice any industry that made the vast majority of its money in the last year due to COVID boosting its statistics have all dropped by between 20 and 30% in the last 10 days. This is an indication to me that investors have decided that the pandemic is coming to an end, whether they want it to or not, and so they're jumping out of their investments in these companies so that they don't lose when these companies crash. And it's a lot of companies. It's like about 30% of the market right now.
Right. Sorry, I was trying to process what you said. Does anyone else have something to respond to with that? Well, I kind of want you on that a little bit more. Maybe Doolittle or Just Jim. What do you think?
So things like Amazon, Netflix, Pfizer, Moderna, all the companies that made their money because people were trapped in their homes or they needed medical care, all of them have lost their major investments 20 to 30% in just the last few days.
Right, because of Omicron. So the investors think we're going.
The investors think the pandemic's over, so they're pulling out.
Right, right. Next thing you know, Amazon's gonna start like attack drones outside of people's front doors. Stay inside. Watch our content. Just Jim, do you think the restrictions are gonna continue, or do you think we're reaching the end of this thing? Are you on the investor side?
Yeah, I'm a little more on the tinfoil hat side of this, and so I think they're going to try to push this all the way to November's election.
Right. There's also this theory, which I was actually.
You talking about midterms?
Yeah.
Well,
not the other November election, right? That'd be scary.
Yeah, it's like oh god. No, the interesting thing, there's been another theory I heard in some right-wing circles, is that so some of the more moderate left-wing media outlets are kind of saying that it's endemic. Like there's kind of a shift towards saying it's all right, kind of just in time for midterms. So there's also the possible political strategy of declaring COVID over and done with for political reasons in order to try to like soften the losses in the midterm and saying, look, with Biden and a fully Democratic Congress, we ended COVID and they'll lift all the lockdowns. That's also been a theory that I looked at that doesn't seem that impossible. That might happen because the incentives actually make sense.
I think that if that is the idea, I think that might actually backfire.
How?
Because a lot of the people who, assuming it's the Democrats intentionally doing this, I'm Canadian, please don't include me in that. But assuming it's the Democrats doing this, the people right now who would vote Democrat. The people who would vote Democrat right now generally think COVID's at its worst. So if you tell them it's over and it's suddenly better, they're not going to believe you, and the Republicans are just going to think you're full of shit. Whereas if it's the Republicans doing it, it kind of makes more sense. But you said maintain power, so I assume you were thinking from the Democrat perspective.
Yeah, I was. I mean, the Republicans, the right side of the aisle has declared this thing over like for a year at least. Like,
yeah.
Republicans have been done with
on
this
the
for a
right
while.
side, like on the center right, there's a meme going around February 1 and we're done.
Right.
And basically people are trying to get together and say, okay, we're all going to stop wearing masks on the same day, and no one's going to be able to do anything about it because there's just not enough clerks at the store to tell you to put your mask on anymore. In the Republican states, we haven't been wearing masks for a year now, so
yeah, I mean,
it's not a big deal. But the center right, you know, where we do have overlap in the purple states, there's a lot of people that are saying, look, we're just going to end this by just not conforming anymore. So and that plan for that is on February 1. And you're seeing a lot of mobilization of moderate voices on social media pushing to end the things right.
Barry Weiss came out as well. So yeah, there's been kind of a groundswell movement for it to end, which gives me hope because there's like a lot of people now, not just people.
Did you
on
mention
the right.
Barry Weiss?
Yeah, she was on Bill Maher recently, and she's like not really a right winger. And like, you know, the people on the right have said this is stupid. We the second the vaccines came out, they're like, this is it. Like, we're done. They've been saying that for like a year and a half. But now it seems that like when you have like Bill Maher saying that stuff is wrong, you know that like I don't know. It makes me feel like the general country is like kind of in that place right now. More out of fatigue than anything. More than
it kind of. I'm sure there's probably a lot cleaner of an analogy, but I'm going to use this one anyways. In sports, there's a concept called voter fatigue, right? And it's when the best player wins the MVP over and over again, right? So
like Tom Brady.
The electorate, right? Well, the electorate gets tired of voting for Michael Jordan for the 7th consecutive year, and they vote for Karl Malone. Even though, you know, Michael Jordan was the best player in 1996 or 97. I mean, it's the same idea. It's you can only care about this type of stuff for so long, right? I mean, unless you're seeing bodies on the sidewalk, and you need to be perpetually caring about it. But you can people only have so much time to care about only so much stuff, and people are tired. They've wasted a lot of energy on this, and yeah.
Yeah, and so on the voter fatigue, there's psychological phenomena where we notice things as patterns after they've happened a few times, right? Though there's this old story, the boy who cried wolf,
right?
And the first time he cries wolf, everyone comes out and saves him. The second time they say, maybe he is, and then the third time there's actually a wolf. And there's something about the third time something happens where people actually start to notice it as a pattern, and start to call bullshit. And the first one was the first one. The second one was Delta. And then you throw in the Omicron. The people start to realize, now hold on a second, there's a bunch of funny stuff going on here. And if they try to come out with a fourth one, not a single person in the freaking world is going to buy it.
Yeah.
Right.
I seen this chart a little while ago. I've been looking for it for the past hour and I can't re-find it. But it was this ring, and it had the alpha, beta, gamma, delta. It had all the strains of COVID and Omicron that never gained any traction, that nobody talked about, because they didn't spread the same way. So if they could very easily just pick out any variant and be like, oh, this one's scary, it's got a crazy high death rate, but it's not transmissible. Like,
right.
For propaganda purposes, there's infinite choices.
Sure.
Right.
There was something else I wanted to mention. This is going to be a short show, by the way, because of just personal constraints, but there was something I wanted to finish with. I'm going to try to remember. This is why I'm supposed to write things down, but I did not. Oh, that's right. So there's still people who are super worried, right? Even though that the WHO, people who I've talked to, people who hold up the WHO and the CDC and Fauci as gospel. And now the WHO is coming out and saying this is pretty much over. Fauci came out and said basically everyone's going to get it. And despite the fact that their authority figures are kind of softening up a little bit, they're still hardcore into all the restrictions and stuff like that. And I wish we had some of them here so they could defend themselves, but I'll just be devil's advocate best I can. And the fact that they're still defending it is interesting. So do you think that means that these people are generally just psychologically predisposed and they were using the experts as an excuse? Or is it more just that they thought the data was what the data was regardless of what the experts said? I'm just kind of curious, what do you think about people who are still stressed out about Omicron? How does one even maintain that frame of mind, given how long it's been, given the voter fatigue that they should be experiencing, given the change in the data? How do you guys think that people like that are still where they are?
I know someone is going to know the term for this, but the only way I can describe it is I think it's the same thing as Trump derangement syndrome, in that they've thought this for so long, they're resistant to change, even if it's from their own sources.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, a thought that I had is that potentially they just don't want to have to, oh God, I'm going to be in the same position that all the people who I hate are in. There's also that potential fear. There's also the real idea that, look, they're worried about hospital overflow. That's what I've heard. That's pretty sound, even though Doolittle kind of talked about how hospitals are always full, dummy. That's the point. But...
Well, if you, just to back up your point, I didn't really want to say this, but in Canada, you don't have hospitals that want to keep their ICUs full in the same way you do in the States, because we have socialized healthcare.
Right.
And the hospitals up here are full, 2 or 3 of them in the main populated areas.
Okay, that makes sense.
And they're going to support hospitals in the region, so.
Are they transferring out tents or what?
No. So what they do is Canada likes wasting money, so we just move patients with helicopters to other hospitals.
Oh my God, really? Not even
If
like.
it's not critical, they'll just use ambulances, and they'll redirect them. But otherwise, if they need an ICU, they'll just move you to another hospital.
Wow. Okay, Omniscient. We are talking about Omicron and how it changes our approach and how it's impacted people psychologically in terms of like they're clinging to their beliefs. And we don't have much time left, but I actually don't think you've been to the show before, so welcome to the party. I just love to get your hot take on Omicron and everything that's going on that side of things. And there's Dan with 10 minutes left. That's fantastic.
Sorry, guys.
It's all right. No, you're good.
I was making steak for the fam.
No, it's understandable. Well, quick take on Omicron. Does it change your approach to public policy at all? If so, how and why? And if not, why not? And give us your quick takes here, man.
Omicron should be regarded to as a weaker form of like COVID as it is.
Yep.
It definitely doesn't maintain lockdowns, but we should just maintain social distancing and, public dense spaces. Especially during wintertime, people should just mask up to reduce transmission. And you should get vaccinated because you're less likely to spread it and less likely to get severely ill from it. That's it. Nothing too controversial, I think. We should definitely, with Delta at those spikes, I would have said, hey guys, we gotta stop doing this. Gotta stop. So we gotta really, really go home, relax, don't go out. You can go out with Omicron. Just be very careful. Make sure you get tested if you've been around people unmasked and that stuff like that.
I was of the thought, and I think this is true, but I'm not like 100% sure. So somebody please correct me if I'm wrong. Is that Omicron, like masking doesn't work as well against Omicron because the particulates are smaller unless you're wearing like an N95 or a KN95. But that Omicron in particular like just ignores cloth masks. So if that's true, what's the point of masking up at all? Because people are not wearing N95s. Like, let's be clear about that right
it
now.
still reduces the range of like water droplets. Listen,
It's not water droplet though. It's aerosolized, I thought.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know enough.
Omicron's completely airborne.
Okay. So I don't know. They tell me wear a mask. I don't know. I don't go too deep into it. I just don't see the point of it's just a cloth mask, It's not like the biggest deal in the world. It's not harming anyone. It's not a big deal. Just wear a mask when you go into like the subway or like dense public areas, I guess.
Yeah, the only sorry, go ahead, Lexicon.
I just want to say it's kind of funny. Over the 2.5 years of COVID here, one thing that I kind of came to the conclusion of was even if you don't have COVID and you feel sick, put on a mask. I mean, that's been standard practice in a lot of Asian countries for like 30 years.
Exactly. Just a mask. It's a mask. It's COVID season, guys. Wear a mask. It's not the end of the world. Everyone's going to be all right.
The whole reason the West seems to be resistant to masks is because it used to be like, you're robbing stores. You can't see someone's face. You can't trust them. I mean, you see someone put on a mask and walk into the store aggressively. Okay, yeah, fear that dude. But if the guy's just walking down the street with a mask, like they're not a problem.
Yeah.
There's also
I went to college on a really diverse campus with a lot of people from like South Korea because we had a students exchange program with the university there. And when they were used to like in the dorms, I would see people with masks. I'm like, why are you wearing a mask? And they'd be like, I'm not feeling well. I was like, oh, that's cool, right?
Sure.
Yeah, they've been doing that for a minute over there.
Well, they've been doing that because they've had SARS outbreaks for many years now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think though
Just
the one
COVID's
concern.
cousin, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The one concern with masks was like for kids and their social development. I'm pretty sure that science is kind of soft, but like overall, I tend to agree. Another big part of the resistance was just the authoritarianism, like in the West and in America in particular. Like it's like I don't want to reduce it to like a pouty child because it's not and it's actually important, but it's more like since you told me to do it, I no longer want to do it, regardless of the merits. Just because you're being authoritarian about it, I hate it. Which like
we got a bunch of little kids running around, but like, yeah, your mom told me to put on a mask. I don't want to put on a mask.
Yeah, but the thing is that we're not kids and we don't like being treated by kids would be the.
It's not, but it is exactly. Be an adult. Things are going on. There's serious. There's a new pathogen out there that is spreading through the air, through mouths. Mask up. Well, this is the anti-mask movement was even at the beginning of the pandemic. All right, let's not bring it over like it's some new thing. With Omicron, you hear a lot less about it because again, it's less deadly, and the masks, I guess, work less well. I already knew they worked because I didn't know it was completely airborne. So you haven't heard less about it, but originally, no, that's the issue. Like originally, just let's be adults about this.
Right. Sure. But how do you feel as far as mandates go, Dan? And this will be last thing, and then I'm gonna have to actually go, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, sorry. Mandates.